Hello and welcome back to... Well, it's very clearly better than Adventure, if you couldn't tell. But in case you for some reason couldn't, yeah, I'm back. So, for some reason the day is reset. I don't know why. What I do know is that, oopsie daisies. The world's fine. Anyways, in the last video, I talked about a few things that were maybe a little bit frustrating, maybe a little bit annoying. The big one was, if you for some reason skip through the episodes, which I understand, one of the issues which I personally had myself was just, a sort of genuinity thing online, where being genuine isn't as valid. Sorry, not as valid. It isn't as valued as it once was. I feel like that's, to continue off of that, I want to talk about specifically... There's this sort of weird thing where old YouTube is sometimes a little bit overemphasized, I guess, or like it's talked up more than I believe it should be talked up. To be clear, old YouTube had its problems, obviously, but old YouTube was in many ways better than the new YouTube, even if it was worse in every way. Like, back in the day, making money was harder. So, I understand that some people, like, even me, I'm not a fan of wanting to monetize my hobby, because I know that if I try to monetize my hobby, that'll make stuff kind of harder, because then I'll have a monetary incentive to do anything. But, you know, simultaneously, being able to do what you like to do, and also get a bit of change on the side and hypothetically make a living, does sound really good for a lot of people. That's why they do it. Now, so yeah, making money, way easier. Not only because nowadays you get paid a bit more because there's more ads to the detriment of literally everybody, but you also have Patreon. You can get sponsored. Good luck with the sponsorships. Sometimes they're a little bit sus, not gonna lie. You can get a lot of really neat, you know, support. You can have your own little dedicated niches. The internet's larger than ever. The tools to make YouTube are way more accessible. Getting a good mic, getting a good guide on how to handle, like, your microphone, getting everything is really, really easy now. So you may be wondering how come it's worse. And the answer might shock you. Like this electric shock. Blah, blah, blah. No, okay. Look, let me explain. The issue is, because it's so easy, it's simultaneously harder, right? Part of me wants to make this a little bit slimmer. Because, how would this... I'm gonna make this slimmer by 1, I think. How did... Because if it's wider by 1, it'd look ugly, but if it's thinner by 1... It'd make more sense because it's only connecting small rooms. Okay, I'll do that. I have to get a new pickaxe, but it'll do. As I was saying, though, the issue kind of comes when you're dealing with, you know... It not only does it being easier kind of make it harder, because then, you know... If everyone's super, then no one is, you know, like Mr. Syndrome said in that one movie I watched as a kid and never again. But also there's a hidden factor, which is that because it's, you know, more lucrative to make money, and because more people have, you know, want to do it, there's more of a reason not to have a personality. Like, there are metas. Back in the day, there was no real meta. When you wanted to do something funny for the internet, you didn't want to have, like, an internet career. Originally, it was about going viral, a term I haven't heard actually unironically used for way too long, honestly. Because it's not about that anymore. It's not about going viral. It's about getting views. And then getting, like, you know, getting money. And that sort of change, I believe, is, well, simultaneously positive one for creators, but kind of a negative on the vibes. Because, like, it's one of those things, right? Like, if I went back to, like, with my current knowledge, at my current age, if I went back to, like, 2002, so I had time to prepare, and I wasn't arrested by, like, the time police that went after Turok, was that... I don't know how the plot goes. I just know this time travel. But if I wasn't arrested by the fucking time police or the time sheriff for, you know, breach of time traveling contracts by doing it for my own personal gain or whatever the fuck the rules are, I would run into the slight issue where I'm not really sure if I would be, you know, like, in this hypothetical, sure, I could do it. I would have the skills, but simultaneously, I would also have the question of would I actually, like, you know, that's time travel. In a situation where I was actually born earlier, who's to say that I would, you know, be inspired to do that if, you know, if you consider the simple fact that a lot of my inspirations came from early YouTube. So I wouldn't be inspired by them in a situation where they didn't exist. But, like, yeah, it's kind of like that, you know, just thinking to yourself, yeah, I could have done a lot of stuff first. But obviously I could have because I'm working with hindsight. But overall, like, I know it's a lot of yapping, but it's one of those things where I genuinely look at it and think to myself, like, I guess the part where you're more genuine is overall better? Even if a lot of the issues that I complain about that exist today are still a thing back then. Like, while you think people didn't, you know, just, like, bullshit game reviews on games they didn't like to ruin their perception, that was kind of the AVGN effect. You know, not only, like, the meme videos, like, oh my god, Mario Bros. 3 is satanic, oh god, I wish, but, like, you know, that there are a lot of AVGN videos on games that were kinda shitty, or, like, kind of but not bad, and they have the perception of being, like, the worst games ever made. It's not just the AVGN's fault, but a lot of games fall in that category. Like, a lot of people think Ninja Turtles on the NES was, like, a really bad NES game, but, like, buddy, do you know how much garbage is on the NES? Like, you know, Ninja Turtles could have been one of the worst games somebody had in their collection of overall solid, you know, NES games, but, like, seriously. Similarly, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde makes a lot more sense if you read the fucking manual. I'm not saying it's a brilliant game, but it explains all of the mechanics that James had no idea about because he got his copy at the flea market and he didn't have the disc. It's not a disc, he didn't have the manual. Which is another reason why, you know, if you have an old video game thing, you need to read the manual before playing. You know, it's one of those things, you know, a lot of NES games, you try to play them, you got no idea what's happening. But that's because you don't have the supporting material that you would use. Why did I design it this way? What was I smoking? What was he cooking? I genuinely don't know. But yeah, over here, do I use the 3 wide? Nah. We'll make it 2. Yeah, I don't know, man. on one hand, I do kind of sympathize with, like, just with the sort of general YouTube landscape. I mean, if I wanted to really, quote-unquote, get big, I would have to pivot to, like, doing technical analysis of the stuff I don't really care about, right? I would have to pivot to doing the stuff that I am clearly capable of doing in decent quality, but it's not stuff that I necessarily often care about, because it's just, you know, at time of filming, I don't know when this will come out, so I've started to, like, I finished my script for Terracon, which is a really cool game nobody's talking about. It's from the PS1, it was a PAL exclusive, tells you all you need to know, but it's a really cool game. And, it's that sort of thing where the game itself is surprisingly shockingly long, unlike the average N64 game. Actually, hold on. It's longer than Banjo-Kazooie. It's like Banjo-Tooie. If Banjo-Tooie was a linear game, it has some really... It honestly does have some... It's not a perfect game. If I had to give, like, the pre-review spoiler TLDR for the game's problems, it isn't exact... I've seen, like, a few bugs, but, like, for the real, like, gameplay ones, because, you know, obviously if you would want to see this game in a new light, you'd fix the bugs. But, like, from a gameplay perspective, the lack of auto-aim kind of hurts combat with anything that isn't on the ground, because going in first person, you know, stops you. The collision is for, like, jumping is just a little bit too unforgiving. And, that and there's no checkpoints in the big-ass levels. And by the way, the thing I have to say about Terracon, the levels are fucking massive. Like, for a PS1 game, for a fucking PS2 game, honestly. The thing is that you don't really notice because you go fast in them. You're a little alien man. You move fast. Reminds me of a specific hedgehog. What was his name again? Shadow? Yeah, I think it was Shadow. No, but seriously, you move fast. Now here comes the gamer's conundrum. So the bottom floor does need, like, one bathroom, one toilet room, I guess. Do I just shove it in the corner? Yes. Yes, I do. I'll shove fucking shit. Mainly because I realize there's no sink in any of them. That's fine. Do it like that. Yeah, that's your sink. I'll just have one here. I don't care. My point is, like, here's the thing. I am of the... I watched a bit of... There was this really good Yahtzee video on, like, game reviews, right? And he specifically said that, you know, you're not critical of something, you know, you don't have high standards... Sorry, not critical. You don't have high standards for something that you hate. And I honestly feel about it in a really similar light. Because the reason why... You know, the reason why I'm critical of some games is because I want them to be better, you know? You know, it's kind of like how... I guess this is my... It's how I treat the N64 and Saturn, right? I'm not an N64 fan, clearly. And I love the Saturn. That's why I've talked about how fucking... Why Sega so many times, you know? Same with Nintendo. But... And then you take a look at the Jaguar. And I just say it's a pile of shit and move on. I don't spend time talking about it. I don't care about it. It's the fucking Jaguar. Do you care? No, you don't. And honestly, that's kind of the funny thing, right? Where not caring ends up hurting the Jag more than if I was just, like, caring about it, like with the N64. Because, sure, I mean, I don't have that many positive things to say about the N64 in terms of execution. I have quite a few positive things to say about the things they tried to include. It's basically, how do I explain this? The memory was so bad, it could have... You don't understand how cool the N64 could have been if the memory wasn't hot garbage, That is, I think, the best way to explain. I was told about those, but... yeah. Like, okay, here's the thing, right? The N64's CPU was, like, Pepega levels of speed for what it needed to be. And the GPU was... it had a shitty fill rate, partially due to the slow RAM, and it had a bad, like, it had some shitty design decisions around... I guess I'm kind of backpedaling, but, it had some shitty design decisions, sure, but it was overall still a good product for, like, what it was, if only the RAM wasn't garbage. Because that was the big issue. We can talk about how, oh, if only the N64's CPU, whatever, it was a little bit, no, the real issue was the RAM. It was always just a memory being garbage. Tell you what, I'm gonna make the tunnels go a little bit weirdly because I can't be asked. The toilets will be here. Yes, no, we'll make a full bathroom because, like, if you're working here, you may just want to take a quick shower, Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, like, I care about the system, which is why I've kind of seemed a bit negative on it. Because there was so much potential on it. If only they actually had a RAM layout which wasn't ass. If only they didn't use slow memory. If only they, it's that sort of thing. And it's kind of like why it's so frustrating with, the N64, where it's like there are a lot of decent components to this system. It's just the system they're in is worth less than the sum of its parts now. Like, yeah, you have a really fast CPU. You have quite a bit of memory. But that memory's slow as ass, and the fucking CPU, like, can't even, like, you can't even utilize it properly. You have a super advanced GPU for the time. Good luck rendering textures, because fuck you. Tiny-ass texture cache, falls by linear filtering. And, like, for what? Like, you don't really gain much. And now that I've done all the small rooms, I have no idea... Okay, so we have one room... I'll take individual screenshots, right? Yeah, it's kind of like why I'm gonna say I preferred the Saturn to the N64. In terms of, like, architecture, because the ways to improve the Saturn are actually not that complicated. Like, okay, granted, both of them would need sweeping architectural changes, right? But still, the Saturn would need, like, what? Ideally, the second SH2, the slave one, would need direct access to, like, VDP1 and VDP2, VDP1 would need to have, like, VDP1 would need to have an actual, forward, it would need to have inverse texture mapping, so it could have, like, you know, fucking transparency or whatever, and so that its fill rate wasn't wasted. And simultaneously, you know, you would have basically that. Okay, if I could restart my train of thought, right? Really, just to reiterate, VDP1 would need to have inverse texture mapping. The second SH2 should have direct access to the VDP1 and 2. And finish the SCU DSP and let it run programs by itself. And maybe let it, you know, access low... I don't know. There's a lot you could do to make the Saturn a better system, right? And simultaneously, there's also a lot you could do to make the N64 a better system if you were, you know, redesigning it. But simultaneously, there's a lot you could do on, like, you know, on both these systems. But the reason why I like the Saturn more is because I think more of the decisions actually made sense, you know, for what it was. Because, like, yeah, shit, transparency was broken unless you did a very specific, you know, trick. Yeah, sure. The, like, architecture was complicated, but you can work around that. You can make cool stuff. The big issue was the N64 was just crippled in a much more embarrassing way, in my opinion, at least. Because, you know, it's an opinion. So we have a total of 12 rooms, which I have no clue what to do with. No idea. But yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is my preference is cooler than your preference. By the way, you would be shocked if I just... Okay, if I do this. If I go around to where the shine isn't that big. I have been busy mining. Oh, this is the entrance. You can see it from here, which is funny. Can you see... Oh, yeah, look, you can see some of the mines I've dug. I've actually managed to connect, like, to the main... Is that a fucking chest? I'll have to check that out. Like, I've connected to the main base via mine shafts. You can just go to there via mine shaft, via boat, via nether now. I honestly really like this design pattern that I made for this. Windows, I think it's fine. But yeah, like, overall, we're clearly not done. But I think I may wanna maybe, why is the water buggy? I'll have to fix that now. You know, maybe I'll spend more time working on, like, decorations outside or whatever. I'll see. The issue is, you know, run out of ideas, shit's fucked, oopsie daisies. And I'm kind of maybe a little bit out of ideas. So we'll have to go up here. Then do that. How strange. Whatever. Wait. There we go. Now it's back to normal. If only it had more decorations outside over here. But yeah, I don't know what to do. So I guess I'll leave it off here. Maybe a little bit short, but whatever. See you next time when we figure out what to do. Also, I forgot there's 2 more things I would have to decorate later. I don't know what I'll do. Bye bye.